Hello, good evening. This is Eric with the Ultramarathon Mindset, and this is Trail Talk Live. The Ultramarathon Mindset is where we help get your body and your mind united, working together for peak performance and optimum health. Today's guest is Denny Krahe. Denny is a friend. I met him online first. We've had a couple of times we've been able to meet face to face. Denny has the Diz Runs podcast. I believe I checked this morning, and I think he's over 830 episodes. So it's been so there's a wealth of information, and I was listening to him even before I started as a runner. It's just there's that he just has interesting and informative, helpful things for health and running. And then when I became a runner, I tuned in and really started digging into the content and the guests and the things that he had to say. Been super helpful. Denny also has a book, Be Ready on Race Day. It is designed for you to have a kind of a DIY training plan to go from to run whatever distance that you want to run to something that works for you, rather than a one size fits all training plan. He's a big believer. Says that one size does not fit all. That you need an individual, something designed for you and your style. He's also a coach and a speaker, and I'm going to bring him on, and we're going to head down the trail and see where things lead. Okay, Denny, you're on with us, and what I want to do is, I'm going to ask you a question to get started, and then I'm going to switch over because I didn't mention that I have a separate monitor, and I'm going to pull up and try to get the live so that I can get comments, because I can't. The platform that I'm using is great. I love being able to have this, but I can't get live comments. So if anyone's watching live and you want to comment, if something, can maybe even ask a question. Can have a little bit of interaction if you're watching this live. So Denny, I know you start off your podcast asking everybody, and yet I can see you smiling. You know where this is going. Every podcast you ask your guest, what is your favorite distance to race and why? And so since I can turn the tables on you, I'm going to ask you, what's your favorite distance to race and why?
Yeah, so I've gotten that question once or twice because of that fact that I ask it all the time, and I always end up saying that my favorite distance to race is the marathon. It's not necessarily my best distance to race. I feel like I'm at least in the past, my best races have typically been the half marathon, where obviously not quite as far, a little bit easier to, I think, be well prepared for, but the marathon is still kind of that white whale for me. Like I'm starting to get, I feel like, a little bit better at. I'm seeing some progress. Starting to seeing the times continue to tick down and get a little bit faster. Still have a long ways to go to get to where I want to be, but I feel like I'm starting to figure it out. So I think that's why the marathon is still my favorite distance to race, and that it's the hardest one for me to kind of get right so far of the distances that I've really raced. I've run a couple of 50Ks. I don't know that I would say I really have raced them. I've run them and tried to run hard, but I didn't really go into them with any type of big goals or ambitions or things like that, other than to enjoy time out on the trails and run the event. But as far as actually like really racing hard, executing a plan, still trying to figure out the marathon and get it quite right, which is why that is still my favorite distance to race.
So I know that you've run trails a little bit, but you're mostly a road runner, if I remember right. It's just from the comments that I've heard from you is that you're marathon, but you're also kind of road marathon. It's kind of where
I end up mostly on the roads. I enjoy the trails a lot, but for me, and maybe this is a terrible excuse, I don't know. But it's the convenience factor of being able to walk out my front door at 5:30 in the morning, get an hour in, and be home. We have a 5-year-old, so be home before she wakes up or shortly after she wakes up. In a previous life, being able to help her get ready for school and out the door. In the current life with the coronavirus situation and schools not being in session, being able to be home and do her, teach her kindergarten for the first half of the day because my wife is a teacher as well. So her teaching responsibilities are heaviest until about noon. So she teaches her classes until noon. I teach kindergarten or work with kindergarten until about noon, and then we switch off, and she's able to take over the afternoon teaching / parenting duties. So anyway, all that to say, to try to get to a trail means for where I live in Central Florida, we do have some decent trails around here, which I didn't used to think we did, but I've found some good ones to run. But it's at least a 20-minute drive each way, probably more like a half an hour each way. So to get even just an hour of running in, it's a 2-hour commitment versus to get an hour of running in is on the roads outside of my house in my neighborhood. It's a literal a 1-hour commitment. It's walk out the door, run, and walk back in the door. So the convenience factor pushes me towards running the roads a lot more. And one of these days I'll make it more of a priority to get on the trails more often. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And right now roads is where it is, and at least for me, and it still scratches the itch. It gets me moving. It's good enough. But I do enjoy the trails and have plans to run more of them when life gets back to normal, and I can sneak out in the middle of the day because everybody's at school, and so I can get up and do my work and then go out for a run. Leave the house at 9:00 and get back at noon and get back on with the day at that point.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people in my running group. They're a mix of road and trail runners, and a lot of them will run on roads just because it is like what you say, a 20-minute drive or farther. In fact, there's some people who come to our Thursday night runs. They'll drive for almost 45 minutes to get there, and so it's a social event as well. So when we're able to get together, that's been something we've all been missing, is that connection with other people on the trail. And so I understand that time commitment. I'm fortunate in the fact that the trails that I run are 5 minutes from my house, and so it's it's super convenient, and so that's great. So, tell me a little bit about your background. What got you started running, and then making the move from running to coaching?
Yeah, so I was definitely the anti-runner for a long time. I played a variety of sports growing up. As a kid, I mean, whatever was in season, that's what I played. So baseball in the summer, football in the fall, soccer in the spring. I grew up in northern Michigan, so the winter time was pretty low key. Maybe a little bit of basketball when you got old enough that they started having indoor basketball, but year round playing sports, whatever. But never took to running. Just the idea of running was always the worst part of practice, right? Like you ran before practice started for conditioning. That who wanted to do that? Nobody.
Some coaches would give you running as punishment. I mean, if you did, of course, you go run laps because you messed this up.
Yeah, exactly. That was part of it too. So I never really enjoyed running. Got to college and would run semi-regularly, but only for the exercise component. Never because I enjoyed it. Strictly to keep the proverbial freshman 15 down, keep the late night beer and pizza runs, keep that from affecting the waistline too much. Maybe one of the sorority girls would ask you to go for a run, so of course you would say yes to that invitation, whether you really cared to or not. But it was never something that I enjoyed doing. And when I started dating my wife towards the last, well, actually, I was just freshly out of college, and she was still in her last year at Florida Southern, where we went to school. She would ask me to go run, and then she was like that annoying person that would run ahead and then turn around and run back to me, and then run backwards, going, "Come on, let's go." Yeah. I mean, she was like all that stuff that is sometimes hyperbole, like that. She literally did all of those things. And I still never enjoyed it, but it would just do it because of the fitness and the health benefits to it, and even to the point where I would, I'm going for a run. She's like, "All right, well, have fun," and then get back. How did it go? It was terrible. Everything about it was terrible. I didn't enjoy it. So then fast forward a couple years, I ended up at Middle Tennessee State University for grad school. My original undergraduate degree and education was in athletic training and sports medicine. So I was at MTSU working as an athletic trainer as my day job, going to grad school at night. And I ended up working with the track and cross country teams for a year and a half. And so it kind of started out of boredom of, you'd sit at the track for 4 hours, 5 hours for practice. And it was just like, gosh, I am so bored. Like, there's only so much homework you can do. There's only so much research you can do. There's only, you're taping ankles and stretching and getting people ready for practice, but that doesn't take the whole time. And so it was like, I would just start running a couple of laps to just kill 20 minutes and wake myself up and whatever, just go out and run for 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever. And then I found myself doing it when I would go to the away meet. So we would be at Georgia Tech, or we'd be at Auburn, or we'd be at Kentucky, or we'd be at whatever different universities where they had the track meets for the weekend. And because of the athletes that we had on the team, like, I usually had to be there first thing on like Saturday morning for like one or two athletes, like the throwers, basically. They were always like the early morning part of the meet. So I'd be there for them. They'd finish their event, and assuming they didn't need anything, which is most of the time the case, I'd have like 3 hours until the rest of the team would show up. So it was like, all right, well, I guess I'll go just run around campus and go just check out campus. Like, I've never been to some of these universities, especially some of the ones that are, the architecture is amazing, hundreds of years old, or, just old architecture. Go run around and just check it out, sightsee. And then that's where it really kind of started to grow. And, I started to get to where I could run 6 or 8 miles, not fast, but, I had a few hours. I could go out and run and stop and look at things around and whatever, and get back to where I had to be before anybody knew that I was even gone. And then I'd have a couple of my athletes that'd be like, hey, they'd see me running at practice. They'd see me run. They ran the day before, so they were there in the morning to cheer on a friend. And they're like, hey, you want to go run? Let's go run. And it kind of started snowballing from there to where in 2010, I signed up for the Disney World Marathon as my first marathon. Really, as my first race longer than 5K. Had no idea what I was doing. You'd think I would have after spending 2 years hanging around the track team, but the farthest they ever ran was 10K on the track, or like 8K, 10K in cross country. So I never really saw any of them preparing for longer distance stuff. So I was just like, yeah, whatever. Like, literally my longest training run was 14 miles, and that was the week before the marathon. And I thought I was ready, and I was going to go out and just hammer 26 miles because I could run 14 the week before. And that didn't end well, as you can probably imagine. That was a rough last 10 miles of that day. But I survived it, swore off I'd never do marathons again, ran the same Disney marathon the next year, swore off I'll never do marathons again. Ran the half marathon the next year, which was better. But by that point I was hooked, started to read more, research more, kind of started actually training consistently, which, spoiler alert, that is beneficial when it comes to running longer distances. If you're consistently training, that might be beneficial. And so then, somewhere like 2013, I started kind of getting fed up with some of the political, not politics, but the political stuff of the place where I was working. And so I was kind of looking for opportunities to maybe, look for a different job, but we just bought a house, trying to start a family. So I didn't want to like move and uproot and go chasing a job somewhere else. So ended up starting a personal training type of business where I could be my own boss, self-employed. That was going well, and then got kind of discovered podcasting, started a podcast that was centered around just health and fitness, general wellness. Decided that one was pretty cool, pretty easy, and well, maybe not pretty easy, but that I would like. I mean, why not start a second podcast? You got one, might as well have two, right? Why not? So I started the running podcast in 2014, and just kind of was talking to runners and shooting the breeze there. No real plans on making it my business until people started asking if I coached, and eventually you get enough people asking if that was something that you might do, and you go. At first, I was saying no because I'm not trained in it, but then I realized I started looking into getting certified as a running coach, and realized that I went to grad school for exercise science. I went undergrad for athletic training and sports medicine, and all the certifications most of the certifications for running coaches were like a weekend course. And I was like, wait a second, I have 6 years of of education in these exact same same subjects, same topics that they cover in a day and a half on a weekend. Like, I bet I could probably do this without that, one little extra certificate from the various groups that offer those types of certifications. So decided to say yes, and picked up a client here, picked up a client there, and fast forward, I guess it's been it'll be 5 years. It'll be 5 years of coaching this fall. So like September or so of this year, 2020, will be 5 years of coaching, and have been able to make this my sole gig, is to talk about running and to help runners, and it's pretty awesome. And it's just one of those things, looking back a decade ago, there's 0% chance that we would be sitting here today having a conversation about running.
Yeah.
Yet here we are.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's good. So you got into coaching. You kept up your personal running then, and your personal goals. How does that mesh with your coaching? I mean, do you try things out with your personal stuff that you're doing for your training to help with your coaching?
Yeah, definitely. I have definitely become my own guinea pig with trying out some different philosophies. Or I'll have an athlete that I'm working with that comes to me, and perfect example was a couple of years ago. Somebody's like, "Hey, I used to do kind of the low carb, high fat method of eating, kind of the paleo, primal, whatever you want to call it, keto, whatever label you exactly want to put on it. But not eating a lot of carbs." And I used to do that, and I had like my best marathon ever when I was following that diet plan. Kind of fell off of it, and I'm thinking about going back to it. What do you think? And I was like, well, I mean, there's some people that say it works, some people that say it doesn't, and kind of we were going back and forth for a few times, and I was just like, you know what, I should probably at least look into it and like actually do some actual proper research into it and read some books and figure it out. And as I'm reading, I'm going, you know what, not only should I read about this, I should probably try it a little bit. And so, as we're still having the conversations, and I'm trying to kind of help her along in that position that she was in, then I start diving into it. Then I start diving into heart rate training more for, again, to check it out on myself. I mean, it's great to see the research. It's great to see some of the books that are written on the subject. But people writing books are trying to sell books. So like, they make it look good. Does it actually pass the test? And so I was, kind of decided that before I could really start promoting that type of training or really kind of put my stake in the ground that this is something that I really believe in, I needed to try it. And so, I continue to try to tweak and refine stuff for myself first, see how it works. If it works for me, I understand that's still just a sample size of one. So it doesn't mean that it's guaranteed to work, or doesn't necessarily mean that it's guaranteed to not work. But I at least, test it out on myself first, then maybe not push it, but present it to the athletes I coach that I think it might be beneficial for. Kind of say, here's how it worked for me. Do you want to try it? If yes, we go down that road. If no, then we kind of keep doing, some of the more by the book types of things that certainly still do work. But yeah, I definitely have been able to use myself as a guinea pig. Nothing more so than with the heart rate training, like the real hardcore kind of maffetone style of pretty much everything is below a certain heart rate level, and some of the low carb diet eating plans as well.
So I'd like to get a little bit more in both of those. Tell me about the diet eating plan first. What was your experience with that? I mean, where were you at before? I mean, I know you said you kind of were kind of the standard American diet where it was primarily carbs. Is that where you were at? And then you switched over to, well, not primarily, but heavier on the carbs than
certainly
than the proteins.
Yeah, I would say that prior to that, but certainly once I got into running pretty heavy and kind of the business side of things, and this has become my life, I would say that I was following more of a real food plan. So it was, the kind of like the stereotypical way of saying it is the things that you get at the grocery store that are around the perimeter. So the fresh stuff, the as limited processed food as possible. But I wasn't, worried about counting macros or counting carbs or anything like that. Fresh fruit, yes, bring it on. Sometimes not heavy, but a little bit of whole wheat stuff or whatever, things like that. No problem. And so then, kind of got into checking it out and reading more about it and realizing that, the two really go hand in hand. The heart rate training and the low carb way of eating go hand in hand, because your body's ability to process and ability to become efficient at processing fat for fuel. You can't be working out too hard. You can't be running too hard in the early days of doing that, or your body just defaults to burning sugar because that's the most easily accessible fuel source. So you really have to be disciplined at the beginning stages. And by the beginning stage, I mean like 2 or 3 months worth of pretty much no speed work, no tempo work, nothing harder than, the stereotypical easy running type of thing. And so the two kind of went hand in hand. Right? When I decided to take the plunge, I said, all right, I got my heart rate strap and, connected that to my watch so I could monitor, set the alerts to tell me that if it went below, above, my heart rate started getting up above 140 beats per minute, like I needed to slow down. I needed to walk until it came back down, or whatever I needed to do, slow down. And then really, I wouldn't say that I'm keto. I've never really tested what level of blood sugar or whatnot is. I've a few times like counted or tracked the food that I'm eating to kind of get an idea of where I am carbs wise. But for the most part, it's just, kind of still going back to that real food thing, like nothing processed, or at least little processed as possible. I'm not afraid of having sweet potatoes. I'm not afraid of having, an apple when it's in season, or some grapes, or, some fruit, things like that some people that are really kind of hardcore on the low carb things are like, no, you can't have fruit because there's too much sugar there. Like I try not to go overboard. As in like, I used to just sit down and get like a whole, 2-pound bag of grapes and just like eat them all in like a half an hour, because grapes are delicious.
They taste good, and they're
exactly, and they're fruit, so they're healthy. It's like I try not to go kind of like that crazy anymore. I try to spread that bag out over at least a few days, as opposed to maybe an hour. But other than that, I mean, it's mostly just I still struggle to eat as many vegetables as I probably should, but vegetables, proteins, different meat sources. I'm not afraid of dairy. I know some people, again, you get the sugars in dairy, the lactose in dairy, they get a little bit weary about that. I'm not afraid of that. Not afraid of a little bit of fruit, but, try to avoid processed, try to avoid things that have hidden sugars in them. And just by doing that, like you're pretty much in that low carb threshold anyway.
So what difference did you notice? I mean, when you went to this, was it a big switch, or was it just a small step?
It was a big switch at first, just because I was trying to be more aware of what I was eating. But from the training side of things, or the physical side of things, once you kind of get to where your body is adapted at burning the fat for fuel while you're training, while you're running, as opposed to relying on stored blood sugar, like you kind of get to the point where, like, it sounds cliche, and maybe it is a slightly cliche, but like you can just kind of run forever, or at least until you're like, your body just like, your legs can't handle going anymore. But you'd like never run out of fuel, to the point where I don't want to say that I'm like bonk proof at this point, but like I'm kind of bonk proof at this point.
Yeah.
Like the best marathons I've run, some being the fastest, but even like from my first marathon, after I really had made the switch, and pretty much every marathon since then, save for one where I just paced myself terribly in the hills of North Carolina, that I was not prepared for the hills of North Carolina. Like I felt strong. I've been able to finish strong. I've never felt like I ran out of gas, and I'm hardly fueling during a marathon. Like I'm drinking water for the first like half of the race, and then maybe switch over to like a little bit of Tailwind or Gatorade or something like that. But not even drinking like maybe drinking a third of what their recommended serving amount is, barely taking on anything. And it's like just that little bit of sugar to kind of just keep things firing. But going 26 miles, going 30 miles out on the trail for a 50K, and just I feel fatigued in my legs. Like my legs are tired. My legs are starting to fade towards the end of the race. But there's never that feeling of running out of energy. There's never that kind of mental fog that sometimes you can get into when you're running low on carbs and you're getting to that bonk state. And so that's been the game changer for me. Like it's just like I don't question, like as long as I've done the work in preparing it, of course. But if I've done that, I don't have concerns on race day of, am I going to bonk? When am I going to bonk? Am I going to have GI issues because I'm trying to force down all of this, the carbs or all of the fuel sources during the course of a race to make sure I don't bonk? Like, I don't really have to fuel at all if I don't really want to. Sometimes it's nice to have a little, at least to me, it's nice to have a little flavor as opposed to just water over the course of a race. So like, that's why, like I said, last half or so, I'll start to mix in something into my water bottles. But that's been the change. Like I don't worry about running out of fuel. I do all of my runs fasted. Like I wake up first thing in the morning and just, have some water and I'm out the door, whether it's 5 miles on a Tuesday or whether it's 20 miles on a Saturday. Like I don't, nothing, like just water and go, and never, again, outside of feeling tired in my legs, but never from an energy standpoint, never from a running out of fuel standpoint. It's been years since literally it's been a couple of years since I felt like I've been running out of fuel on a run, because I've been doing this for a couple of years now. I feel like I'm healthy as I've ever been. I feel like I'm as strong of a runner as I've ever been, and getting stronger, every day, every week, every month. And I don't know that I'm going to say that's 100% because of that change in the diet and the change in how I train, because like I said, those two go very much hand in hand. But man, it's like I can't say that it's not because of that. Like it's definitely, that's part of the equation for sure.
Right. So okay, for people who are not familiar with the heart rate training, I mean, I learned it from you. I first heard about the heart rate from your podcast, and then we had a discussion. I think I called you and had a consulting to kind of lay out a plan for me for my last year when I was going for 100. So, explain the concept of what heart rate training is in a way that's. Yeah, you don't have to go into all the details because I know it's multi-layered, but give kind of a thumbnail sketch for someone who may have not heard about that, and what is, and also tell what it's done for you.
Yeah. So basically, what ends up happening to the vast majority of runners is that we kind of settle into what feels comfortable to us as a pace that's probably a bit too fast or a bit too much effort to really be considered easy, but not hard enough to really get the physiological benefits of like a good hard workout. It's just kind of in that gray area of not easy, not hard. And so what heart rate does when you're measuring your heart rate is it kind of takes that objective ability to be like, yeah, it felt like it was easy, and really quantify it. Like, you have your heart rate has to be below X, and there's different formulas to determine what your X might be. I follow the simple one, which is just 180 minus your age. So however old you are, you subtract that from 180. That's the heart rate you want to stay under. So I'm 38 now. So I guess my technical or my simple number is 142, which is why I have my heart rate to go off at 140. So I know I'm getting close to it, but I can back off before I get over my number. But again, there's different formulas, there's different ways. It's all going to end up being close to that same number more often than not, which is why I just go the simple route. But what happens? So when you stay underneath that number, that really forces you it forces your body to work in the aerobic state, which is building your base, which is what for endurance runners what we should be all about. The more endurance we have, the more solid our aerobic foundation, the better we're able to go longer, the better we're able to go faster on race day, because one thing that people always push back on, or at least the question people always ask is, well, how am I going to get faster if I'm running easy all the time, or at least running easy the vast majority of the time? And the simple answer is that most of us, I hesitate to say all, but I mean this is just about all of us, don't have to get faster to reach our time goals. We need to be able to hold on to the speed we have longer, which means we need better endurance. And to illustrate that point, one of my biggest running goals is to qualify for Boston. And to do so, I need to run a 3 hour and 10-minute marathon, which I'm not close enough to be there that I'm really worried about the exact times, but I believe that means that my marathon pace needs to be about 7:10, 7:15, something like that. Whatever it exactly is, that's a good enough ballpark. I can go out and run a mile in 6 minutes and 2 seconds, 6 minutes and 8 seconds, something like that. So clearly I'm fast enough to run the 7:10, 7:15 for 1 mile, not for 26.2 miles yet. But I don't need to get faster to run a 3 hour and 10-minute marathon. I need to be able to run at a higher end of my pace range. I need to run at a higher level of effort, but be able to run that for 3 hours and 10 minutes, as opposed to being able to run it for 1 or 2 miles and crashing and burning, and just going up in flames. So I need to build my endurance so that I can tap into that speed that I do have for a longer amount of time. And it sounds ridiculous, even when I'm figuring out the words that I'm going to say right now. I understand it already sounds ridiculous to think that if I'm running at 9:30, 9:45, 10-minute pace, 10:30, 11-minute pace sometimes for my long runs by the time it's all said and done. It sounds ridiculous to think that that is going to help me run a 7:30 pace or a 7:15 pace for the marathon, but all that's doing is building my endurance and building my ability to just grind out and go and go and go. And then when I do run a race, when I do decide to push things a little bit, lo and behold, like, I'm able to go. I'm not at the point yet where I can run that 7:15 pace for even probably 5 miles yet, but I know I can do it for I know I can do that. Actually, I probably could do it for 5 miles. I probably can't go for 10 miles there yet.
Okay.
But 5 miles, yeah. I mean, not a factor, because I've built that aerobic base. Even though I couldn't tell you the last time that I ran 7:15 pace that wasn't on a race day. Like, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't happen. It's not something I do really ever. But when I jump into a 10K or when I jump into a half marathon, like, the speed is pretty much there, and now the endurance is there too, which that's going back to the original kind of starting to figure out the marathon a little bit. Like, that's why is that I'm able to lock in and go, and then when I get towards the end of the race, I'm like, just 10K left to go. I'm pushing hard, but, like, I'm not slowing down. I'm actually getting a little bit faster in the last 10K because there's still enough gas left in the tank. There's still that endurance there. So that's what the heart rate training does. Is it builds the base so that when you're ready to push, like, you got something to push off of, which anybody who knows anything about construction, building anything, it's all about the base. You get a good solid base layer in place, you can build upon it. If you don't have a base, you can't put very much pressure on it before everything starts to crumble. And that's a very apt metaphor when it comes to building your aerobic fitness, building your running fitness, is solidify that base. And the only way you can really do that is to train at a level that your body considers easy. It doesn't necessarily mean that you feel like it's always like, I could go faster and it would still be easy. But if your heart rate's saying, nah, like, you need to cut it off at 10-minute pace, because that's where easy is for us today, then that's, I don't want to say that's the only way to do it, but that's one of the most sure ways to do it. That's one of the most, assured ways to build that base up. And so I'm a big believer in heart rate training. It's not as fun, quote unquote, as fun as some of the, doing all kinds of hard workouts and posting all kinds of epic paces and look at me run on social media. Like, I post my runs and it's, 10:14 pace and it's 9:57 pace. And it's like, I mean, it just doesn't, like, it hits the ego a little bit, because it's like, I know I can run fast in that, but that's not, like, I'm not trying to run fast because it's Tuesday morning. Like, I'm trying to build that base so that whenever I get into my next race, whenever that is, I can go. And so keeping that big picture in mind, it makes it easy to put up with the frustration of not running hard very often.
Yes. Well, I have a couple of questions about in relation to heart rate training, just because last year I was following. Actually, I didn't follow the same formula you did. So one of my questions is, what about people who have a higher than normal heart rate? And the second one is, what about older people? Because I fit in the category. I've always had a higher than normal heart rate. I mean, back when the formula used to be 220 minus your age was kind of the back when Forrest Gump was jogging, and that was the standard. And I would often train, even I was younger, and that was when I was running in my late 20s, and my heart rate would sometimes, actually one time we had to stop and count the beats with your watch, because we didn't have the heart rate monitors like we do now. But it was one time I got my heart up to 230, and I thought, this is like, I'm off the scale, was what I what I thought. And I typically would run 180 or so just with in normal. And now, using the formula you were talking about, I'd have to be at 117. And if I'm walking a brisk pace up a hill, I can hit that easily. So how does the heart rate fit for those kinds of situations?
So, again, that kind of ties into exactly which formula, which school of thought that you kind of buy into when it comes to your heart rate training. So, like like I mentioned Maffetone's name earlier. Dr. Phil Maffetone is kind of the pioneer, if you will, or at least the leading, the guy who was saying heart rate training is the way to go. 25 years ago, when before anybody was really buying into this whole running slow, everybody was just trying to run hard all the time back then, and he was leading the charge. And from what I can gather from the things I've read, he kind of is just a pretty firm. He's got a few alterations in there. I think there is one for age. Like I think his alteration for age is, once you get once you get to 60, it might be 55. Like that's it. Like you don't keep going down and down and down. So it's like once you get to whatever that is, whether it's 120 or 125, so I can't remember if it's 55.
Yeah, that would make sense.
But he's just like that's it. Like just stay below that number, no matter how much older you get. He also has some variances for as far as, if you've been running consistently for a couple of years and no injuries, you can add some beats to your number for that. If you're sick, then you subtract some beats. So there is some wiggle room in that formula. I just use the simple version of it, the 180, and not fuss with it too much. Because I don't have any of the negative things as far as like I haven't been injured, I haven't been sick, I haven't been those things that would take numbers, take beats away from me. And I'm not worried like if I could run 146 versus 142, like whatever. Like it's I'm not splitting hairs that much. But I don't know that I've seen anything that he's said about if your heart rate is just naturally it's a little bit higher. I feel like from what I've read of his that he would probably say like you still like
you just
whatever your number is, that's what it is. But again, I know that there's other kind of methods, there's other thoughts, there's other ways of figuring, kind of what your different levels are. You could always, in theory, you could always go to the lab and do like an actual like maximum aerobic heart rate level test, which where they'd put you on the treadmill and they'd put the mask over your face, so they're measuring how much oxygen goes in, how much oxygen comes out when you're exhaling, and kind of seeing how you're processing it, and that would give you a number of as far as here's your number that you need to stay under at your heart rate to keep your oxygen levels from really turning over or whatever. A little bit more above my pay grade as far as being able to properly explain that, but they can test that in the lab with actual numbers to give you a real proper. Your formula says your heart rate should be 125, but because of what your fitness level is, it actually should be 132 or it should be 119 or whatever. So you could get the test that way. But again, like I try to keep it simple, but I can understand if you have a heart rate that runs a little hot, I would probably want to find a different formula that would allow me to have a few more numbers.
Well, I admit from, after you and I talked and you'd kind of given me this formula, and it didn't work for me. And, so I kind of went by feel and just kind of had a baseline of, my easy pace was around, 135, 140, and if I got up to 150, I'd dial it back. And that's kind of, right. And I followed that most of the summer. And I was able to, last year I built endurance. I mean, that was really what I was at. Really what I was after was building endurance. So, I mean, I did a lot of power hiking. I did a lot of walking, just because I knew I was going to do 100 miles, and I knew that the technique for walking was going to be more important than my technique for running, because and I was able to, I got to where I could walk a 13-minute mile. So I had a pretty good, had a pretty good base of, to fall back on when I wasn't running. I got a question from Jordan Zimmerman, who is watching us live. He said, "Is it best to start the heart rate training on a track?" He says where he runs, there's a lot of hills, and also for trail runners. I mean, trail runners, there's some pretty gnarly hills, and I mean like. We have a lot of elevation sometimes we go up. So how do you handle that if you're wanting to run trails? How do you handle the hills with heart rate training?
Yeah, that's a very valid question, and something that you kind of have to decide what works best for you. So there's no question that running on the track is good. You're going to be able to run more at a lower heart rate than out on some gnarly trail, whether even if it's a flat trail, but just the terrain and dealing with obstacles, and there's jumping over this tree branch that's down and whatever, and then start adding elevation to the mix, and certainly that's going to bring your heart rate up even more. So when it comes to the actual kind of like the nuts and bolts of heart rate training, if you're in the right zone, you're getting benefit. So if that means you're running laps on the track, if that means you're run walking, or even quote unquote just power hiking on the trail, you're getting the benefit. Understandably, from a runner to a runner, I get that it can be kind of a tough pill to swallow to say, I'm going to go out and power hike the trail for the most part when I want to run, and trying to embrace this. So if that's something that you struggle with a little bit, Jordan, then staying on the track, staying on semi flat surfaces, at least at first, to kind of get used to running a little bit easier and kind of starting to build some of that base is not a bad choice. It may be a good choice. It's not like the only choice. Like I said, you can still go out on the trail. I know for myself, I certainly noticed that, when I'm running the streets in my neighborhood, like I can cruise at a pretty good pace these days. I mean, at least pretty good for me relative to heart rate. When I go out on the trail, like it's a minute and a half, 2 minutes per mile slower usually to keep the heart rate pretty much at about the same spot. Just because A, it's a little bit hotter usually because I'm running more in the middle of the day as opposed to first thing in the morning. But B, it's the terrain. It is running on the terrain and the ups and the downs and things like that I don't deal with on a daily basis. So, you can do it whichever way that works for you. But if you're kind of struggling with the idea of I'm going to do a lot more walking than usual while trying to keep my heart rate down, then getting on the track is a good way to minimize the amount of walking that you might have to do for some workouts.
Yeah, and for me, last year I got to the point where if it went up, I walked. I mean, it was like the only place I ran was level or downhill, and so and it was like I was probably not as strict as what you're talking about, but I was kind of aware of my heart rate, and so I walked a lot of the hills, and sometimes pretty slowly, just because just I was monitoring that. And again, like you said, strict. Like I am strict with it. Like I kind of follow the guideline of, unless I'm doing a workout, which I do every once in a while, but I mean every once in a while, like every 6 or 8 weeks, as I do a workout. Unless I'm doing a workout, it's always below the number. Period. Like if it gets above it, it's even now. It's although I'm pretty good at keeping an eye on things and backing off before it gets to the number. If it does, I walk. Period. Mm-hmm. So, there are other ways of doing heart rate training or effort-based training that have a little bit more flexibility to it. So, you don't always have to be as maybe strict as I'm coming across like you might have to be. Like there is some wiggle room. As long as you're doing most of your time in that easy range, you're building that base, you're building that foundation that is going to get you to where you ultimately want to go. Yeah, I found a benefit from it, even though I wasn't doing it the way as strict. I found it was beneficial, and it gave me. And again for me, it was my second year of running. When it was like I hadn't been running all my life. I didn't have a big base of fitness of running fitness behind me, or any kind of fitness. I'd pretty much been been somewhat active but sedentary for probably 30 years. And in 2017 started working out, or 2017 started your kind of the low carb diet that you talked about earlier, and riding a bicycle, and then at the end of the 2017 started running. So that I think that the year that I spent with that was really good and was really helpful. So I'm doing more harder workouts now, but I'm also running barefoot, so it's changing my stride, and there's a lot of.
And you've got the foundation in place, so you're able to do more because you've got that base already in place, which gives you a lot more leeway to do some harder stuff and running faster and things.
So how does strength training factor in then? I'm just because I know you've talked a little bit about that you do that. What kind of percentage of strength training do you do along with the heart rate?
Yeah, definitely a fan of strength training. I don't do any of the big kind of crazy, CrossFit style workouts or, big time heavy weights. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Like I don't want to, weights are good and using extra resistance is good. I again, kind of goes back to the reason I don't run as many trails. Like I would rather just work out at home and not have to get to a gym, not have to even, I mean, like the subdivision community, whatever you want to call it, that we live in, like we have a gym that's, open to the residents of the neighborhood. So like, not that it's like a maximum great gym, but there's some enough weights that you could go and get a good, resistance workout. But like, I'd rather do it at my house than go to the front of the community and go to the fitness center with all the people that live here. So like, I've got 25-pound dumbbells and 10-pound dumbbells, and most of the time I just use body weight anyway. But absolutely, strength training is a good thing. And you don't need to do a lot. Like, I mean, my typical strength training routines are like 10 to 15 minutes long. Do them a couple times a week. Maybe do some push-ups, some pull-ups, other times outside of those kind of more structured, quote unquote, workouts. But I mean, that's it. Like I probably should spend a little bit more if I'm really honest, but like I probably spend 30 to 40 minutes per week strength training, mix that into like two legitimate sessions, plus, like I said, some push-ups, some pull-ups, some little things here and there. But it's mostly lower body, lots of lunges, lots of hip mobility, some of the runner specific things like the clamshells and the bird dogs and things like that, that kind of work some of the glutes, and some squats, some planks, some core work, some hip extensions, some stuff to work the back and the obliques a little bit. I don't do a lot for upper body outside of, like I said, I do push-ups and pull-ups at least a few times a week. But simple stuff, big combination exercises. I don't really do any isolation stuff, at least for big muscle groups. I'm not doing bicep curls. I'm not doing any. Even if I was to go to the gym, I wouldn't be doing anything where I'm sitting on the leg machine and doing the leg extensions where you're just kicking out, where your thighs are locked down and you got the bar in front of your ankles. I'm going to do lunges. I'm going to do squats. I'm going to do deadlifts, things like that are working multiple joints, multiple muscle groups, so I can get in and out as quick as I can. But definitely, I'm a proponent of strength training. Something that it's great for injury resistance. It's at least as far as to reduce the risk of injury. It's good for building that strength to help you propel yourself a little bit faster. I mean, if we think about the physics of running, like you're pushing off the ground, and so if you can push off with more force, you're going to propel yourself forward more with each stride, which that's one of the keys to getting faster. It helps to build endurance as well, as far as muscular endurance, like I talked about earlier. I don't feel like I run out of gas at the end of a marathon from an energy perspective. I feel like my legs are starting to fade. So doing some of that strength training helps keep the legs going stronger at the end of a marathon. So lots of benefits to it. With really, you can get away with a pretty minimal time commitment. You don't need to spend an hour multiple times a week. Like I might spend, like I said, I don't even think I spend an hour most weeks in total. And I probably maybe should do a little bit more, but a couple times, 15, 20 minutes at the most, a couple times a week, like that's if you're doing the right exercises, that's all you really need to do.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I would like to ask you about your book. Your book, Be Ready on Race Day. I've read it. It was great. It was helpful for me. But talk a little bit about what led you to write the book and kind of your philosophy behind the one-size-fits-all training plan that so many people seem to sign up for.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of, I don't know where that kind of one-size-fits-one mentality, kind of where that really rooted itself for me, but it's kind of something I've always been against, the idea of one-size-fits-all. Like it's just like it's just not true, like even you get a hat that's one size fits all, but it still has an adjustable thing on the back, so it's clearly not one size. Like, how do you even call it one size fits all when you can adjust it? So with the idea of seeing training plans where it's download this free plan and it'll help you prepare for your first marathon, or to run your Boston qualifier, your first sub 2 hour half marathon or whatever, and then you look at it and it's just on these days you do these things and that's it, and it's just like that just never really set right with me. And when I got into coaching, of course, one of the things that I promised, like one of the few things that hasn't changed over the years, is that like I write the workouts, I write the training plan for each person. So like I don't require that everybody does their long runs on Saturday, or everybody does their long runs on Sunday, or even that everyone does their long runs during the weekend. Like if doing a long run on a Tuesday works best for your life and your schedule, then we're going to make sure that your long runs are on a Tuesday. And then, when it gets to race week, we'll make sure that you have enough rest time, and we'll adjust things that 1 week and a half so that, you're ready to go on the Saturday or Sunday of your race. But, it just never sat right with me, to the idea of just download this plan and follow it to the T. Because I don't know. I mean, I just feel like nobody's life works like that, where, like you've got work, you've got kids, you've got family, you've got obligations. And so I try to always have tried as a coach to respect that that's the case with everybody I work with, and create their plans accordingly. And so then when it, kind of was kicking around the idea of going to write a book, and what am I going to write it about? And, some folks in a kind of businessy mastermind type of group that I'm in was, it was kind of a challenge that they were putting together. And it was like kind of writing a book that kind of explains what you do. And so for the folks that maybe can't afford to hire a coach outright, but are at a point as runners that are sick of the idea of getting a one-size-fits-all plan, and knowing that it doesn't work for them, but not being sure how to adjust it, and like, what things do I cut out, and what things, like, how do I I don't know. It was like, I felt like there was a need there, and there weren't really any books that were kind of telling people how to actually put a plan together. It's all just, buy my book on how to train for how to follow my one-size-fits-all plan, and buy my book for how to follow my one-size-fits-all plan. And it was nothing like how to teach a man to fish, as opposed to just fish and form type of situation. So I just kind of went through my process, and these are the things I do before I even take pen to paper and start writing out somebody's plan. These are the questions I'm asking the clients that hire me. These are the things that I'm making sure I'm checking out what their schedule is, and what their life looks like, and how much can they really commit to training right now. Because I've learned that there's sometimes people are like, oh yeah, I can run as much as you want me to run, and then like they struggle to run 3 times a week. And so it's just like, well, you can't, like, if we're only going to run 3 times a week, which is fine, let's make sure that these are the 3 days, or what do we need to do to make sure that we can make this work. So kind of looking at those things first, and then figuring out, all right, here are the things these are the days I can run, this is the time I have available. What am I going to plug into those days? Is it going to be all different types of workouts, or easy run, kind of talking about the different things that go into creating a well-rounded plan. Full disclosure, I wrote the book before I was really hardcore into the heart rate training stuff. So it talks more of, it still talks about running easy and the value of running easy, but I probably have a bit more talk about workouts in there than what I would probably do for myself, certainly now. Mm-hmm. But again, the workouts are still, there's nothing wrong with the workouts as long as the base is there as well. So it just kind of talks about how to structure a plan, either whether you're starting from scratch and building your own, or whether you're taking one of those downloadable free plans, but then giving you a roadmap on how to adjust it, and how to really, go, all right, well, this is the progression that I think I should follow, but like, I know I can't do this, so how would I make this adjustment? And this week my kid's getting married, so I know I'm not gonna be able to run that week, but that's okay. Like, here's how to adjust it, and just go from this week, and then this week I'm not really running, and I get back on track next week and not skip a beat, and just how to put it together so that by the time race day does roll around, hopefully you're doing what the title says, you're actually ready to go, as opposed to having a bunch of questions of what if, and I don't know, and did I do the right thing with making the changes? Like, it just really tries to hopefully lay it out in a way that's pretty simple to understand, pretty straightforward. I think one of the best compliments I've gotten is that, like, yeah, I sat down and read it in like an hour and a half. Like, it should be that easy to read. Like, it's more of a handbook than like an actual, big, like something to reference regularly. When you're putting your plan together, pull the book out, dog ear, check things off, follow along as you go, and really kind of hopefully put a plan in place that has you feeling like you're prepared when it's time to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and we're getting close to an hour, so I want to be respectful for you. But tell me real quick, what's coming up for you? I mean, I know we're all kind of on lockdown, and there's a lot of races canceled. But do you have anything that you're shooting for, or maybe we're shooting for, and it's kind of on the back burner now, or what's looking ahead for you?
Yeah, it really is right now. A lot of unknown. I hadn't signed up for any races. I did the Goofy Challenge in January at Disney World, which is the half marathon and the full marathon on consecutive days. I ran for Team and Training, so it was my first time doing like a charity running thing. That was pretty cool. And then as I was kind of looking forward to maybe actually, doing a couple of trail races this spring was something I was planning on doing. And then everything, before I'd even signed up for either of them, all this, the coronavirus situation happened and races are canceled. And so I didn't lose any races that I had already signed up for yet, but the races that I was kind of thinking about jumping into have certainly been postponed at this point. So yeah, the slate's pretty clean. I think, like a lot of folks, I'm hopeful that things on the COVID-19 front will settle down, or there'll be some type of treatments or vaccines or something that comes out sooner rather than later, so that we can kind of start going back to life as normal, which means some runs with friends again, and hopefully some races again, sometime summer, early fall, something like that, being able to get into some of the races. I don't have any races that I'm shooting for just yet, but once races are happening again, I'll certainly be looking around for something local, probably, and whether it's on the trail, whether it's a road, something, I don't know. I wouldn't mind leaning towards the trail, just because, again, I may not run the trails often, but when I do, I enjoy it, and I enjoy the vibe of a trail race. I enjoy the vibe of a road race, but I definitely enjoy the vibe of a trail race a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Just kind of chilling, and everybody's just kind of there to hang out and have fun and whatever. So I wouldn't mind getting into one or two of those this fall. But yeah, right now everything's just open, just kind of trying to stay healthy, keep things moving in the right direction, keep training, keep running, and see what tomorrow brings, and then see what the day after that brings, and adjust as we go.
I did see on your Facebook group. I forgot to mention, you have a Facebook group that is pretty active. I think it's called the Diz Runs Tribe. Isn't that the name? Yeah, I
think that's the official name. Yeah,
the official name. I was like, it's I've got it on my list, and so I don't even pay attention to the name anymore. But yeah, I saw that you had referenced Lazarus's Run Across Tennessee virtual race, and somebody asked you if you were going to do that. It's 1,000 kilometers or something, isn't that right?
1,000 kilometers. Yeah, it's unlike the Vol State 500K, which is an actual in-person race that I'm assuming probably isn't happening this year, where they go kind of northwest to southeast, kind of the short way across Tennessee, if you can call it the short way across a state that's that long. They're going, southwest to northeast, which is about 1,000 kilometers. I think it ends up being, I don't know exactly what the exact number is 1,015 or something like that. But yeah, so I decided to sign up for that kind of a virtual race type of challenge. But I'm also, I guess, now that I say it, I guess I do have a couple things I'm working on. So this year I decided to sign up for the Run the Year challenge, so running 2,020 miles this year. Which actually, the way that the breakdown goes for Laz's challenge across Tennessee, it ends up being just about exactly the same number of miles as what I need for my pace for 2020. So if I get one, I'm going to be on pace for both of them. So it's a little over 5 miles a day, which is pretty much what I'm running, about 40 miles a week right now. So I'm just over that pace anyway.
Okay, yeah.
So I am doing that this summer, and then for the year I'm working on the 2020 challenge. But outside of that, no specific races that are on tap right now. Yeah.
Okay. That's good. Well, tell people how to connect with you online. If they want to hire you as a coach, or at the Facebook group, the podcast, give all of the specifics on if people want more information about you or connecting with you. How can we do that?
I try to keep things as simple as possible. So everything is pretty much Diz Runs, at least in some form or fashion. So dizruns.com is the website. All the podcasts are there, all the coaching information, from a one-off call like we've done in the past to working together going forward month to month, whatever. All that information's there. The book is there. You can also get to the book on Amazon. Again, Be Ready on Race Day is the title. Social media, pretty much just search Diz Runs on Instagram, Twitter, other places too, but those are the two places that I really actually hang out and interact for the most part. So just at Diz Runs. Obviously, the Facebook group is if you just search Diz Runs, it's going to pop up as well. You can also just find me as a person on Facebook, which is just my name, Denny Krahe. Pretty simple there. But yeah, I try not. I don't know that I did it on purpose. I don't know that I can claim that it was intentional, but I got lucky in that when I signed up for everything with Diz Runs, like it was available. And so I just was not creative enough to have different names across the board, which now is super easy. Because I know when I interview sometimes people on my podcast, and it's like, all right, on Facebook it's this, and on Instagram it's this, and on Twitter it's this, and the website is this, and it's like 6 different things to go to 6 different places. And me, it's all Diz Runs. If you can remember that, you remember the 7 letters, you're going to find me wherever you want to look.
Oh, that's good. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. There's a lot of good stuff, and I've enjoyed visiting with you again. And best of luck to you in all your endeavors and your Boston qualifier. I know you're working on that. I'm going to keep listening and keep in touch of how that's going for you. So.
Well, thank you, Eric. I just got to get, 5 or 10 years older and get about 15 or 20 minutes faster, and somewhere the line will meet in the middle.
The line will cross,
yeah. The lines will connect. But thanks, Eric. Good to connect with you as well, and certainly looking forward to it.
I appreciate it. Talk to you later.
Sir.
Man, thank you so much for watching. This has been, I've always enjoy the people that I talk to on the Trail Talk, and it always seems to go in places that I never expect. And so I try not to have such a really tight plan, but hope you enjoyed getting acquainted with Denny. I have gained a lot from him just through his podcast and the few times that we've talked in person. And so I hope it's been great for you. If you want to connect with me, we'd be glad to hear your responses from anything you heard here. Feel free to message me if I can help you out with your running. I would be glad to have a conversation with you to develop an ultramarathon mindset, help you get your body and mind in sync to function at your peak. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.